I'm supposed to be moderating this session, but I'm going to not perform any such function. We'll go straight into the 5 speakers. We are almost an hour late. Not the fault of anybody, maybe entirely my fault for packing so many speakers into this day, but I think we'll be grateful at the end for having heard these kinds of very pointed presentations. So I'll start with Akansha, who's first in this series. And the only thing that I'll just remind you is this session is called Out There. And that was deliberately placed after immersive temporal. So out there in different ways. The arrangement of the speakers is important. I wanted to go from the research, archival, cartography that Akansha created in KNMA. These are all in some ways institutional, non-institutional, the dialectic between the two kinds of categories. What Akansha did in KNMA, Noida, I go on to Sharmila, speaking about the great intervention in Bombay in the World Social Forum. And then we go to Pooja, speaking about not specifically Khoj, but in fact 48 degrees, which mapped Delhi in a particular way. And then Jitish, not speaking with images, but speaking about Kochi and the world. And in the end, Vishal speaking about augmented reality and virtual spaces. So it's a run-through and a quick one, but we hope that at the end we will have some time for questions. Thank you.
Featuring a new class of curatorial objects. And can you zoom in? Make it a... So recently I've been obsessed with this brilliant poem by artist Muskan Singh, which is titled as Phool Phoolna Shuru Kar Denge. Ant mein yeh katora badhega. Flowers will start flowering. At the end, this bowl will grow. So I don't know why I kept it here, but somehow I think we'll realize it why. Yeah. So a particular vocabulary, aspirations, and processes were relayed, built around Hanger for the Passerby, the exhibition I curated in 2017 at the Kiran Nadar Museum of Art, which was an assemblage of various intensities of working together, collectivities, collectives, collaborative artistic practices, moments of transference across different generations of artists and artist groups. The exhibition focused on ideas of and around work, artists' work, context, emotional investments, challenges and stakes involved in artistic collaborations, and sociality. Through unexpected collisions of utopias, accumulation and stirring up of various durations, events and formats of working together, scenarios, architectures, and phrases, while exploring what a collective body is and how it moves. So Hanger, as an exhibition that contemplates collectivity, was trying to think through its form and content as it emerged and blurred boundaries across mediums and, and also different propositions, moving anachronistically, creating its own field, torques, distillation processes, and producing a spatial imaginary and an exhibitionary complex which is quite aggressive, making demands on the passerby / viewer to come halfway for any meaningful exchange. So today, from the Hanger's vocabulary, I would like to briefly talk about a new class of curatorial objects. Hanger contained curatorial objects, as well as now travels in sections as a curatorial object. So which is, again, something that lies at the intersections of curatorial and the museological. So in the last few years of exhibition making and thinking, one has been working on something now one has been working with, thank you so much. One has been working with something that I've now come to call as curatorial objects. There seems to be need to propose this classification within the domain or hierarchies of art objects or objects in the art and the exhibition condition. And with this category, I imply a class of objects that have shared lineages or origins spread across geographies and periods, a class of objects with multiple authors who do not share the same time, space, and intention, Defining the structure and methodology of this sharing is part of the plot laid out by the curatorial object. A curatorial object is not a collaborative or participatory project where the will of each maker is entwined or prior permission is sought for use and access. Rather, it is a highly contested and negotiated object that causes delays, stores excesses of an event, mediates and sometimes locks ideas and events for a period of time. Curatorial object could actually be a temporal state. It's a class of objects that cannot be claimed by an individual, and in many ways complicates the process of valuation and evaluation. It also causes displacements in the received art historical narratives. They're part accidental, part designed, and there's an immensity of time frame that in these objects that are highly volatile, mobile as a construct, and manifest as independent mode of thinking, always exceeding their status as objects. Far from being a fixed entity or stable, the curatorial objects do have individualistic tendencies, operating as assemblages or groupings containing a range of cultural materials and thought structures, which may include artworks, archived objects, and much more. But it is not, a curatorial object is not an exhibition in itself. It is a part of an exhibition. It functions as a broken or an unready tool to project questions and proposes porosity and penetrability in the exhibition field. Within an exhibition, it is a kind of rerouting from the regime of thematic exhibitions. It is not a juxtaposition, rather a specific construction. It creates a complex relationship between the material it holds, and most importantly, it can spring up at the slightest impetus, and whenever given a ground as incrustation, and can easily be disguised as an artwork, but it is not an artwork. It disappears as mysteriously as it appears. And Hanger was full of such objects that didn't exist before, at least not in the same way. And sometimes not in the same form or way, and sometimes had only a referential past. I call most of the material in the Hanger for the passerby as indigestible, a term coming from metabolism or metabolistic science. So indigestion happens when your system rejects or refuses to process something. Not being able to break down or digest is an uncomfortable feeling of fullness, bloating, nausea, or burning sensation. So the material that Hanger churned or projected was unsettling because of its value, vague origins and destinations, as in where it is coming from, where it is moving towards, remained remarkably unclear with its volatility preserved, yet to become something occupying an intermediary space, escaping immediately available classifications, material that was neither complete reject or discard from artistic practices, nor even a byproduct or a residue, but definitely carrying traces of artistic life, something made alongside, but not a documentation, not just a documentation, or not claimed yet as a work of art with defined value. So curatorial objects constitute of and can spin indigested material with a certain torque. So the souvenir shop at the heart of the Hanger is one example of the curatorial object. The incline is another, so just to give two examples for today. Occupying the center of a young and enterprising museum of modern contemporary art, which is temporarily deflected as a hanger for the passerby, the souvenir shop was projected as an outlet of a short-lived pan-India artist group 1890s proposed but unrealized art center's souvenir shop. It was populated with Group 1890's imaginary produce, as well as with ideas, objects, images, people from their peer groups. This volatile aggregation from 1950s to 70s primarily presented artist practices and reflections on craft, design, indigenous motives and techniques, creativity and utilitarian objects, and within that, the place of modern artists within it. So, one can list out the kind of material it contained, like, for example, batiks by artists from Cholamandal Artist Village. In Chennai, K.G. Subramanian's textile pieces made during his term at the Handloom Board in 1952. Textile pieces by Barve, Meera Mukherjee, sari by Hakusha, designed at the Weaver Service Center. Cafeteria tables loaned from Bharat Bhavan Bhopal, which were designed by Akhilesh and Swaminathan, toys made by various artists during the annual Baroda Fine Arts Fair from the Faculty of Fine Arts, drawings and designs for textiles by various artists from Weaver Service Center, Bombay, documents from Astitva Collective, which was again a collective that partially emerged from Weaver Service Center, Bombay, pages from Rajiv Sethi's unpublished manuscript, Three Stones, slides showing batik wall hangings, pendants by Arnavas, and also a solo exhibition of artist K. Ramanujam displaying 10 of his rare drawings. So there were many coups in there. So reimagining this inventory of a gift shop in a contemporary art museum via the curatorial object, via curatorial object, constructs a kind of a performative space, seeking new alliances, and also doing some sort of a deflection. So an incline was another such construct at the hangar, imagining each point on an incline as a place, and inviting to stay against gravity, and even though for a brief duration, and to imagine a fall. And here we could also think of Heath Sterrill's Free Fall. So the incline provided partial cross-eyed views and in sections and pathways to different parts of the hangar. So while moving up, one could see from the movement of a group of young artists from Center of Visual Arts in Mysore en route to a village with donkeys, with another group moving in their campus looking for trees planted on a particular day every year since 81 years, to a passage of a frenzied dance of an exhausted employee or orientation program conductor of an IT company, to a suggestive experimental geography of a college backyard, up to a point where one looks at the juggler, the puppeteer, the rope walker, rehearsing and performing, and ending at the face by Anand Mohan Nayak, a design done for Weaver Service Center. So the incline allowed this peering, a voluntary interconnection and exchange of glances as one passes by. Thank you.
So I'm not going to, I'm just going to start because I've been told that there is very little time. And I would like to begin with thanking Geeta and Vivan and congratulate the SSAF for creating these support structures for artists who wish to stay on the peripheries of the mainstream and believe in an alternative practice. I'm speaking here in two voices, that of Tushar Zog and myself. So it may seem like a replay, an echo, having practiced together for many years and many a discussion shared. Some segments of this essay are from his notes. I spoke, he wrote. Between speaking and writing, it's also a recollection, and that is intended. Much of our ideology as individuals and as Open Circle, and then as pedagogues, have been pivoted on material of dialectics of response and responsibility. In our practice, we aimed at moving from the habitus of the artist subject to the citizen artist, and through our work, critique the paradoxes of equilibrity, both within the state structures as well as the institutional hegemonies of art practice. Oh, yeah. You want me to? Okay. So, I mean, this theorization is retrospective. When we were doing it, we were not aware of it, but later on, yeah, we have started sort of looking at it in that manner. At many key moments in history, artists have reached beyond galleries and museums, using their work as a call to action to create political and social change. In the past past 100 years or so, the term agitprop, a combination of a contraction or a combination of the Russian words agitatasya and propaganda in the department of the in the title of the Department of Agitation and Propaganda, set up in 1920 by the Central Committee of the Soviet Communist Party. Agitation and propaganda has directly reflected the intent of this genre of work. These projects highlight struggles for social justice, but also intended to control and promote the ideological conditioning of the masses. It took many forms, such as palaces of culture, agitprop, state transport, and cars covered with slogans and posters, poster campaigns, and countless agitation centers. However, Tushar and I did not want to just make agitprop, and not just represent political activists' thought, but then I'm talking about 97, 98, Nicolas Bourriot hadn't happened. And he was simultaneously writing that while we were having our thoughts. Since 1990s, the clear differentiation of new practices from previous forms of artistic presence in the public space calls for alternative definitions, some of them more specific, like relational art, participatory, dialogical, community-based, activist, but other more comprehensive, such as the new genre of public art or contemporary public art. Our foray into art praxis that engaged with non-initiated audiences began with the setting up of Open Circle in 1998 in Bombay, within which one was attempting to take art out of the traditional art spaces like galleries, museums, and engaging with audiences that typically did not participate in what were deemed as the inviolable spaces of art. Rather than metaphorically discussing social issues, we wanted to explicitly empower marginalized groups by engaging directly, all the while maintaining the aesthetic, using both, thank you, using both traditional and non-traditional media to communicate and interact within a broad and diversified publics about issues directly relevant to our lives and experiences. Open Circle, an artist initiative based in Mumbai, it sought a creative engagement with contemporary social political issues through integration of theory and practice. One of Open Circle's main concerns was the cultural homogenization and marginalization of otherness, both in India and in the global perspective. Open Circle engaged in these issues by organizing debates between people of different affiliations and perspectives, and through artistic events that often placed in the public environment and direct actions which react to actual political social developments. We approached public spaces so as to become involved by adopting a pluralist approach that was locally engaged, interactive for diverse audiences with connections to activist groups, NGOs, and people's movements. Art that functions as a social and/or cultural intervention has to be oftentimes realized in response to creatively engaging a community's sense of place or well-being, adopting a working practice of site specificity, community involvement, and collaboration. Exploring the complexity, range, and impact of these artistic practices meant employing installations, photography, film, prints, banners, street actions, performances, songs, games, digital files, and web platforms to create immersive spaces. Working with the Narmada Bachao Andolan, National Alliance of People's Movement, or the Lok Shahi Haq Sangatna meant making visible controversial public issues such as discriminatory policies or illegal cooperation acts for public opinion and in the public sphere. As artists, citizens, we are interested in not just expressing, but communicating dissent, institutional critique, be it of the spaces of art itself or undemocratic policies, unsustainable development. Art praxis that addresses the relationships between the content and the audiences, what the art is saying and to whom, starts gaining significance. We started taking a stand that was more assertively interventionist. We worked in tandem with other organizations, carried out public actions, protests against mega projects dispossessing tribal indigenous people of their land, democratic rights, and a share in the so-called development, etc. The choices of venues and the genre of works attempted to address people from all walks and stratas. The events and art exhibitions spread from galleries to cafes, billboards, pavements, interventions at railway terminal stations of the Western and Central Harbour lines of the local suburban railways, which elicited animated responses from the commuters, and a lot of times a heated debate about the issue, anti-war demonstrations, environmental policies, the effects of mass dishousing caused by slum demolitions and economic inequalities. In 2004, January, the World Social Forum stepped out of Porto Alegre in Brazil and was held in Bombay. Culture was, for the first time, given a predominant role. The art projects initiated by Open Circle looked at intersections between art and activism through aesthetics and politics. The installations were planned and executed with the intention of being staged in the physical public domain, usually outside and accessible to all kinds of incidental as well as purposeful passers-by. Urban demographics revealed a sizable middle and lower middle class and a large percentage of second or even third generation, I'm talking about Bombay, and I think even Delhi, second or even third generation of migrants from a rural background. Both these sections of the population are deeply traditional and hold on to their cultural baggage, which is graphic in nature. This is expressed through small-time publications, pamphlets, posters, calendars, curios, rituals, and festivals. One cannot, however, deny the seepage of consumerism even into these areas. The language of commercials is not the language of the masses, yet it is the language that addresses the masses. Apart from the use of emotional advertising messages associated with oversimplified or sometimes misconstructed social issues, they appropriate the images and the memories of the masses to create a language that is immediately accessible, not only in their visibility and sheer quality, but also the comprehensibility of the image. By contrast, in general, cultural production in the fine arts has always maintained a distance. It neither speaks the language of the masses nor does it address them. Art remains esoteric and non-communicative, and its pedagogy almost always, at least in India, focuses on elitist art production. Engagement with social issues, when undertaken, is seldom suited to the understanding or means and is inaccessible for the common man. The modus operandi is pedantic and exclusionist. Popular images of kitsch, when referred to by the artist in a circulation alien to their context, suffer an exoticization. The images are borrowed or rather hijacked and appreciated for their exchange value in galleries and within the international circuits. They are altered, augmented, but never return to the domain they belong to. The politicizing of aesthetics has a restricted circulation. The restriction the artists impose on themselves. It is here that we are tempted to negotiation with the visual norms. The global politics has spawned a number of international exhibitions and residencies which artists view as a sort of nemesis. The demands of these circuits prioritize only a certain kind of work from the certain part of the globe, an impact through a visual experience. The global politics of control and ascendancy operate under the rhetoric of multiculturalism, while in local politics, the operating mechanisms is that of cruder nationalism and fundamentalism. So bridging the gap, Open Circle's engagement in the years from 2002 to 2005 were directed towards the communication with those audiences that were not gallery goers. The programs were more and more in the public domain and aimed at addressing relevant issues in a manner identifiable and legible to the common man through the strategies of mass media. The idea being to aesthetize politics rather than politicize aesthetics. In the subsequent years, Open Circle organized activities that were collaborations with other activists, media professionals, artisans, artists, school teachers, or even lay people. Workshops and educational programs intended to stimulate learning through actual experience. Then in 2008, we took a long nap, only to awaken in 2018 as a residency program. We are having a program in Dharavi, which is known as Compound 13, where we are looking at recycling, and we are actually looking at the rack collectors who are now being, through education, introduced to art and design. And so we've set up a 3D printer, we've set up curriculums or curriculi for them. Let's see how that goes. taking on the role of the artist citizen to demonstrate relevance of art practice in contemporary society, and as discussed, its connectivity and relation to real life and issues make us look at other ways of engaging with art. Rather than simple exchanges within the art circle between the artists and theorists, we thought it was necessary to work towards interaction with the society and to bridge the hiatus between art and society. Thank you.